Good day, sir. Good day, everyone. We are the Group 4, and we are going to talk about abstract expressionism, pop art, postmodernism, and deconstructivism.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the first topic that we will be discussing in our group is about abstract expressionism. So what is abstract expressionism? It is an artistic movement that emerged in 1940s and 1950s that focuses on a shared curiosity and the utilization of abstraction as a means to express emotion through artistic works. Abstract expressionism is a style of painting in which the artist seeks express emotional experience and that what the artists are trying to draw or paint. And now let's talk about the history of abstract expressionism. In the post-World War II America, citizens found themselves dealing with the aftermath. The impact on the war had on the America psyche was apparent in soldiers coming home with severe PTSD. Families struggled to adjust from a wartime independence to regressive domesticity, and youths sought an expressive outlet under the watchful eye of an increasingly paranoid American government. Communist infiltration was increasing fear among American politicians, especially Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin. Many American artists had a desire to freely express the emotions and attitudes that the public was feeling. However, they simultaneously feared the consequences that might come from any interpretation of their work that might deem them a communist sympathizer. Abstract expressionism art began to emerge as a vehicle that would allow the artist to pursue their desires. At the same time, it simultaneously protected them from any definitive and incriminating interpretation of their work. Abstract expressionists pulled from the surrealists the idea that art is born out of the subconscious mind in a spontaneous manner.
So what are the characteristics of abstract expressionism art style? Typically distinguished by expressive brush strokes or mark making, as well as a sense of spontaneity. So here are the main characteristics of abstract expressionism. As mentioned earlier, abstract expressionism draws several similar characteristics. These characteristics distinguish this form of art from other states, especially when it came up. The main features of abstract expressionism include the following. First, they value free, spontaneous, and personal emotional expression, and they use a wide range of techniques and execution methods to achieve this goal, with a particular emphasis on the use of paint's changeable physical nature to elicit expressive qualities. For example, sensuousness, dynamism, violence, mystery, and lyricism. Second, they place an equal emphasis on the unplanned and spontaneous application of paint in a type of psychological improvisation related to surrealist automatism, intending to express the creative unconscious through art. Third, they show the rejection of traditionally structured compositions comprised of separate and segregable pieces in favor of a single unified, undifferentiated field, network, or another image that exists in unstructured space. Lastly, the paintings fill large canvases to give these aforementioned visual effects both monumentality and engrossing power.
In the previous discussion, it talks about abstract expressionism, brief history, and its characteristics. So now, I will be introducing the prominent American abstract expressionist painters and their artworks. So the first one is Boston-Acadian known as Archie Gorky. He was born in April 15, 1904 in Korkumban, Turkish, in Armenia, now in Turkey. He was an Armenian-American painter who had a seminal influence in abstract expressionism. Gorky has been hailed as one of the most powerful American painters of the 20th century. The suffering and losses experienced in the Armenian genocide had crucial influence at Gorky's development as an artist. He died on July 21, 1948 in Sherman, Connecticut, U.S. Gorky was inspired by nature, his physical surroundings, as well as by memories of his father's garden in Armenia. The artist aimed to present complexities and contradictions of his life, and so the painting and its title holds multiple layers of meaning. Here is the Cock's Camp in 1944 is one of the artist Gorky's largest and most noteworthy paintings. It combines several influences that mark the emergence of Gorky's major original style. The painting was based on a drawing done the previous year The Study for the Liver is the Coxcomb in 1943. Gorky preserved the graphic style seen in the drawing but accentuated the contours and colors, which resulted in fantastical and mysterious landscape. The second artist is Paul Jackson Pollock or Jackson Pollock. He was born in January 28, 1912 in Cody, Wyoming, United States. He also one of the first American painters to be recognized during his lifetime and after as a pair of 20th century European masters of modern art. He was a leading exponent of abstract expressionism, an art movement characterized by the free associative gestures in paint sometimes referred to as an action painting. He was widely noticed for his drip technique of pouring or splashing liquid household paint into a horizontal surface, enabling him to view and paint his canvases from all angles. He died on August 11, 1956 in East Hampton, New York. His artworks are the Teacup in 1946, the second one is the number 1A in 1948. In his drip painting number 1A, Pollock has added his handprints to the composition's upper right as an autograph. He moved away from traditional artist oil paints and used commercial enamel paints for his drip paintings. Due to the fluidity of his paint, he was able to directly capture the movements of his body over the canvas. Pollock chose to no longer give his paintings evocative titles and began to number them instead, because numbers are neutral and would allow people to experience the pure painting. And the third one is Lavender Mist in 1950. The last artist is Marcus Rothkowitz, also known as Mark Rothko. He was born September 25, 1903 in Daugavpils, Latvia. Mark Rothko is a key figure in abstract expressionism, best known for his large color-filled paintings like Number 61 Rust and Blue in 1953. Rothko committed suicide on February 25 in 1970. He failed to see the completion of the chapel in 1971, which was named the Rothko Chapel in his honor. His famous artwork are Untitled in 1945, Number 9 in 1948, and the Number 13 The White Red on Yellow in 1958. Well, as we observe in the artworks, abstract expressionism shows and emphasizes free, spontaneous, and personal emotional expression, and exercise considerable freedom of technique and execution to attain this goal, with a particular emphasis laid in the exploitation of the variable physical character of paint to evoke expressive qualities. It is a non-representational art, in other words, do not attempt to depict real-world objects. Instead, the artist evokes a response from the viewer through the use of abstract patterns and color. So that's all about the abstract expressionism.
So pop art originated in London in the 1950s, but it was in the United States that it took root and flourished. So pop art allows the public to discuss political agendas through a visual medium. So it can be used as a tool to articulate the public's political wants and needs, therefore being an agent in a democratic government. So it was like pop art was a protest against the perceived elitism of abstract expressionism, which in abstract expressionism, it has detachment from reality. So the objects depicted in pop art were firmly rooted in the real world, enabling the viewer to relate to that piece of work. So pop art was the art of popular culture. It was the visual art movement that characterized a sense of optimism during the post-war consumer boom of the 1950s and the 1960s. So pop art was brash, it was young, it was fun and hostile to the artistic establishment. It included different styles of painting and sculpture from various countries, but what they all had in common was an interest in mass media, mass production, and mass culture. So the word pop was first coined in 1954 by Lawrence Alloway, a member of independent group including Richard Hamilton and Eduardo Palozzi. So they became the forerunners of British pop art.
So good afternoon everyone, my name is Rosabel Pontigo and I will be discussing about the characteristic of pop art, similarities of abstract expressionism and pop art. Characteristic of pop art. Pop art is easily recognizable to its vibrancy and unique characteristics that are present in any of the most iconic word of the movement. So below are some of the defining characteristics of pop art. First is recognizable imagery. Pop art utilizes images and icons from the popular media and products. These include commercial items, for example like soap cans, newspapers, road sign, photos of celebrities, newspapers, and other items that are popular in the commercial world. Even brand names and logos were incorporated of the recognizable imagery. Another characteristic of pop art is having a bright colors. Pop art is characterized by vibrant and bright colors. Primary colors red, yellow, and blue were prominent pigments that appeared in many famous works, particularly in Roy Tatenchian's body of work. Next characteristic of pop art is its irony and satire. Humor was one of the main components of pop art. Artists use the subject matter to make a statement about the current events, poke fun and challenge the status quo. Innovative techniques is also a characteristic of pop art because many of pop-up artists like Andy and Roy engage in printmaking processes which enable them to quickly reproduce images in large quantities. Another characteristic of pop art is mixed media and collage. Pop artists often blended materials and utilize a variety of different types of media. It is considering the combining disparate images into a single canvas to create a truly modern form of narrative. Now let's go to comparing abstract expressionism and pop art. So two of the biggest art movements that have dominated the 20th century are the abstract expressionism and pop art. Pop art was heavily influenced by popular culture, while abstract expressionism was more concerned with exploring emotions and inner experience. However, both movements shared a focus on a personal experience and the use of non-traditional materials and techniques. Well, it's stylistically very different. Both movements complement each other, complexing that the 20th century saw with industrialization and globalization. History of pop art. In 1947, Eduardo Paolucci produces what is often considered to be one of the first works of a true pop art. This collage even features the word pop itself emerging from again. While in 1952, where the first pop artists in London art scene must meet and collaborate. In 1954, Frank Cordell may have coined the term of pop art. While in 1955, it has now become a defined movement. 1956 to 1958, Lawrence Alloway writes an essay about pop arts called The Arts and the Mass Media, which helps to popularize the movement and further define it. In 1961, Billy Apple and others first ventured to the United States and meet Andy Warhol, one of the artists of pop art. And American artists collaborate and help to bolster the style's prominence on the art scene. In 1962, the term pop arts is used for the first time in the US by the Museum of Modern Arts in New York during a symposium. Andy Warhol exhibited his artworks, the Campbell soup cans, for the first time. This is also his first solo exhibition. In 1964, the American Supermarket exhibition takes place, while in 1968, Andy Warhol is shot by radical feminist Valerie Solanas and nearly dies from his wounds. In 1975, Andy Warhol publishes his book, The Philosophy of Andy Warhol. In 1979, Warhol helps found the New York Academy of Art. Pop art artists and their artworks. Andy Warhol is one of the famous artists in pop art. Campus of Cans is one of his artworks. It consists of multiple canvases that are aligned linearly, as if on a grocery store shelf. Each one features a campus of can in a different flavor. Although every canvas is hand painted, they are all uniformly replicated, indistinguishable from one another except for their different flavors. The piece thus exemplifies pop art's use of the mass advertising production style. Marilyn Diptych is also the artworks of Andy Warhol. Marilyn Diptych is a multi-canvas composition of portraits depicting the Marilyn Monroe. Each canvas is rendered in neon black colors with an overlapping silkscreen effect. One of the composition is done in color white, the other half is monochrome black, as you can see, with a faded printing effect. It exemplifies the heightened materiality of the mid-20th century, asserting that even people could be objectified and commodified. Next pop art artist is Roy Lichtenstein. Wham by Roy Lichtenstein. Wham is a composition of two canvases that portray one fighter planes striking down another with a missile. The interpiece is rendered in a comic strip style, with a limited primary color palette and a black color design. It is also features characteristic comic word bubbles and black letter sound effects. Johnny Girl is also works of Roy Lichtenstein's. Johnny Girl depicts a young woman drowning in Lichtenstein's signature comic strip style. Her face is central to the piece, surrounded by water. It is also features a tough bubble with the phrase, "I don't care, I rather sink than call Brad for help." The dialogue in the panel, clearly disjointed from the remainder of the story's plot, adds an element of satire to the piece. Another pop art artist is Richard Hamilton. Her artwork is named "Just What Is It That Makes Today's Home So Different, So Appealing." It is considered the first prominent work of the pop art movement. It is a collage depicting the interior of a home formed by cutouts from magazine. It includes contemporary Adam and Eve, surrounded by numerous elements of post-war consumerism and mass media culture. So those three are the pop artists in the 20th century.
Architecture in pop art. So pop architecture is the true democratization of the art of architecture, in that it represents not just mass consumption, but masses taste. So we have here Happy Rizzi House in Germany, the Big Donut Drive-In in West Manchester Boulevard, California in 1995, and the Cream Can in Los Angeles, California in 1928. So mostly, as you can see here in the architecture, they just express themselves in a fun, in a young way. Here in the Happy Rizzi House, it's colorful, it's dramatic. In the Big Donut Drive-In, it's just a big, large donut. In the Cream Can, it is a cream can. So, music and pop art. So when pop art broke out in the 60s, it influenced album covers, fashion, chairs, toys, and still remain a major influence on graphic art, advertising, and pop music.
Post-Modernism broadly refers to social, cultural, and literary theory and the shift in perspective that has manifested in a variety of disciplines, including the social sciences, art, architecture, literature, fashion, communications, and technology. It is generally agreed that the postmodern shift is perfection began sometime back in the late 1950s, and it is probably still continuing. Postmodernism can be associated with the power shifts and dehumanization of the post-Second World War era and the onset of the consumer capitalism. The term was first used around 1970 as an art movement's postmodernism to some extent diffuse definition, as there is no one postmodern style or theory on which is hinged. It embraces many different approaches to art making, and may be said to begin with pop arts in 1960s and to embrace much of what followed, including conceptual art, Expressionism, feminist art, and the young British artists of 1960s. The very term postmodernism implies a relation to modernism. Modernism was an early aesthetic movement which has evolved in the early decades of the 20th century. It has often been said that postmodernism is at once or continuation of a breakaway from the modernist stance. Postmodernism shares many of the features of modernism. Postmodernism even goes further and deliberately mixes low art with the high art, the past with the future, or one genre with another. Such as mixing up different incongruous elements illustrates postmodernism, use of light-hearted parody, which was also used by modernism. Modernist and postmodernist work are also fragmented and do not easily directly convey a solid meaning. Now let's move on to postmodernism and modernism. Postmodernism was a reaction against modernism. Modernism was generally based on idealism and a utopian vision of human life and society and beliefs in progress. Postmodernism can be seen as a reaction against ideas and values of modernism as well as a description of the period that followed modernism dominance in cultural theory and practice in the early and middle decades of the 20th century. The term is associated with skepticism, irony, and philosophical critics of the concept of universal truths and objective reality. It assumed that certain ultimate universal principles or truths such as those formulated by religion or science could be used to understand or explain reality. While modernism was based on idealism and reason, postmodernism was born on skepticism and a suspension of reason. It challenged the notion that there are universal certainties or truths.
Good afternoon, everyone. My topic for today is about postmodernism. So in short, postmodernism is a set of ideas emphasizing instability and localization of all knowledge. So let's come to the first artist and their artworks. Joseph Cosot, and the name of his artwork is One and Three Chairs in 1965. It is example of conceptual art. This form is artistic examination of Plato's philosophy and a reflection of the allegory of the cave. Cindy Sherman, and the name of her artwork is entitled Film Still and Number 21 in 1978. It is a black and white photographs dealt with fragmented postmodern identity. Gilbert and George, and the name of their artwork is Gordon's Makes Us Drunk in 1972. Gilbert and George is an example of postmodern art and characterized by its irony. They are seen drinking the best gin of the 1970s. Guerrilla Girls, the name of their artwork is Do Women Have to Be Naked to Get into the Met Museum in 1989. This artwork is the second wave of feminism falls into the era of postmodernism. Many female artists have incorporated their political views and fight for more women's rights in their works of art.
Postmodern art is a body of art movements that sought to contradict some aspects of modernism or some aspect that emerged or developed in its aftermath. In general, the movements such as intermedia, installation art, conceptual art, and multimedia, particularly involving video,
are described as postmodern. The use of the text prominently as the central artistic element, collage, simplification, appropriation, performance art, the recycling of past styles and themes in a modern-day context, as well as the breakup of the context between the fine arts and the high arts and low arts, and popular culture. There are several characteristics of postmodernism, and that includes irony, playfulness, black humor, pastiche, intertext quality, metafiction, temporal distortion, technoculture and hyperreality, a sense of paranoia, maximum and minimalism, fiction and fabulation, magic realism, a skepticism towards all sorts of meta-narratives. Postmodernism is one of the most controversial movements in art and design history, and over the 2 decades from about 1970 to 1990, postmodernism shattered established ideas about art and design, bringing a new self-awareness about style itself. Since the late 1990s, there has been a small but growing feeling both in popular culture and in academia that postmodernism has gone out of fashion. However, there have been a few formal attempts to define the name and the era succeeding the postmodernism, and none of the proposed designations have yet become part of the mainstream usage. Postmodernism is widely considered to be the movement that has brought about several endings: the ending of the meta-narratives as the collective idealisms, the ending of history as the end of totalitarian system, the ending of reality as simulated in the end, the ending of the seriousness as the end of nostalgia, the ending of inspiration as the end of literature's sacredness, the ending of magic as the end of the author's magic trick, the ending of creation as the end of originality, and the ending of the novel as the end of genre purity. Yet in the 1990s, another ending was being talked about: the postmodernism.
Hello everyone, I am Charlotte Vivertorazo, and I'm going to discuss what is Deconstructivism is all about. So what is Deconstructivism? Deconstructivism is a movement of postmodern architecture which appeared in the 1980s. It gives the impression of the fragmentation of the constructed building, commonly characterized by an absence of obvious harmony, continuity, or symmetry. So deconstruction doesn't actually mean demolition. Instead, it means breaking down or analyzing something to discover its true significance, which is supposedly almost never exactly what the author intended. Deconstruction has at least 2 aspects: literary and the philosophical. So first is the literary aspects concerns to the textual interpretation, while the invention or the philosophical is essential on finding hidden alternative meaning in the text. So Deconstructivism appeared in the early 1980s, but only truly started to grow in 1990s. This postmodern architectural movement name stems from deconstruction, a form of literary analysis led by the philosopher Jacques Derrida. Originally, the architects who designed deconstructivist buildings refused to label their work as an architectural style or movement. In their eyes, their approach simply contradicted that of modern architecture, and as such broke away completely from history, society, places, and technological traditions. The term deconstructivism, however, remained in everyday language. It now refers to the general trend amongst contemporary architecture. So who started deconstructivism? Philosopher Jacques Derrida started deconstructivism, which is a form of philosophical and literary analysis, derived mainly from work begun in the 1960s. So this time we will talk about Jacques Derrida. So Jacques Derrida was born to a Sephardic Jewish family in 1930 in El Bayar, a suburb of Algiers, at a time when Algeria was a French colony. Jacques Derrida was one of the most well-known 20th century philosophers. He was also one of the most prolific, distancing himself from the various philosophical movements and traditions that preceded him on the French intellectual scene, which are phenomenology, existentialism, and structuralism. Philosopher Jacques Derrida was known to be the father of deconstructivism. He offers deconstruction, which is in part a way of reading philosophic texts intended to make explicit the underlying metaphysical supposition and assumption through a close analysis of a language that attempts to convey them. His works on deconstructive theory and method includes Speech and Phenomena in 1967, Writing and Difference in 1967, and of Grammatology in 1967. Among his other works are Psyche, Invention of the Other in 1987, and Resistances of Psychoanalysis in 1996. Deconstructivism is often described as one of the most visually striking and perplexing types of art ever developed. Deconstructivism is characterized by the following. First is the use of fragmentation. Next is the manipulation of ideas of a structured surface or skin. Next is the redefinition of shapes and forms. Next is the radical manifestation of complexity in the building. So there are different types of deconstructions. First is the modernism and postmodernism. Next is we have also deconstructivist philosophy. Then next is deconstructivism and Russian futurism. We have also contemporary art. Then we have the 1988 MoMA exhibition. Then lastly is the computer-aided design.
So some of the artists and their artwork. Ziha Hadid, 1950-2016. Died March 31, 2016, Miami, Florida, US. Iraqi-born British architect known for her radical deconstructivist designs. In 2004, she became the first woman to be awarded the Pritzker Architecture Prize. So below is the Zaha Hadid architects or architectures. So Bergisel Sky Jump, the new wing of the Ordrop Guard Museum. So next is Owen Gehry. Frankie Gehry is a Canadian-American architect who famously designed Walt Disney Concert Hall. His main style is postmodern. Gehry believes that architectures should speak of its time and place but yearn for timelessness. He had a rich life and career with countless awards, including the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2016. This lesson is going to teach you about Frank Gehry's life, his work, and the major honors he has received for his contributions to architecture. So below is his architectures, the University of Massachusetts, Frank Owen Gehry 2004, and IAC New York headquarters, Frank Owen Gehry 2007. So next is Peter Eisenman. So Peter Eisenman was a notable American architect renowned for his radical designs and architectural theories. He is widely regarded as the constructivist. So Peter Eisenman was born on August 12, 1932 in New York, New Jersey. He attended the Cornell University and graduated in 1995 or 1955. So he then attended the Columbia University, so New York, for his master's degree, which he received in 1960. So below is his architectures, the City of Culture of Galicia, Spain, Greater Columbus Convention Center, and then the Wexner Center for Arts, Ohio State University. So that's all for my report. Thank you.
So here is the overview of the report. So in abstract expressionism and pop art, both of those art movement expresses individual freedom and both of them uses vibrant colors. But in abstract expressionism, it is all about putting different colors, shapes, and textures to create an image, or in other words, to create an abstract. Meanwhile, pop art was just purely for entertainment, advertising, etc., to create symbols that can relate to people or things that regulate their lives. Meanwhile, in postmodernism, it embraces randomness and disorder, and deconstructivism is just a subset of postmodernism. So we have various artists that were featured in abstract expressionism, pop art, deconstructivism, and postmodernism. And here are like the overview of the arts themselves. As you can see, in the abstract is just random shapes, colors, and stuffs to create a meaning. Meanwhile, in pop art, it is Marilyn Monroe, a significant icon, and she was put in like a different filters or colors. In postmodernism, as you can see, there is a chair
there is a painting and there is a picture of that specific scene. So the chair is just so random, as the definition earlier was mentioned. And deconstructivism, it's shapes, it's irregular shapes. It uses vibrant colors to form a house. So that's all for our report. Thank you for watching. God bless us all.